What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Biggest winners and losers from the NFL draft. We have a ton of things to go over today. So much has changed after the draft. Finally have clarity on a lot of different situations that we were watching going into the draft. Both dynasty and season-long rankings have been updated on the site, thefantasyfootballadvice.com, if you want to check that out. And then I also did an interview with Notorious Fantasy over on his channel, kind of going over some of the things about the fantasy industry. So I'll link that video in the description if you're interested in that. But we have 23 players to go over in this video. I want to say it's 14 players that lost value and then 9 players who saw their value increase. So in order to make it not a super long video, can't go over everyone in depth. But we'll make it long enough. We'll hit on some of these guys. So we're going to do the bad news first. I'm going to go over all of the players who saw their value take a decrease. Then we'll finish it off with some good news. So first up, we've got both Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup. Both of them saw a pretty big decrease in their stock. Obviously, we know Cooper is still going to be a good wide receiver. We know Gallup was already on that lower end, but both of them taking a hit. We know CeeDee Lamb is an exceptional wide receiver. He's going to take a good chunk of targets. He is not going to out-target Amari Cooper in my eyes, but it doesn't matter. You know, he's going to take a lot of targets. And so when you look at this offense, you've got Zeke, you've got Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup. Each one of those players is going to take a good share, and so the production is going to be spread out a lot. And so what was everyone's concern with Amari Cooper every year really is his inconsistency, right? He's going to have those weeks where he has 203 touchdowns, but then he has like 1 for 10 the next week, and that's pretty annoying for your wide receiver one. Now you add in another really good weapon, it's going to make him even more inconsistent, and those spiked weeks aren't going to be as high because is he really going to have like 15 target weeks now? Probably not. So we're going to see him have still very high variance, but the high end isn't going to be as great. And then, of course, for Michael Gallup, we know he's like the 4th option on the offense. It's going to be a good offense, but how much can you really trust the 4th option? Not that much. So definitely both the decrease there. Cortland Sutton also saw a big hit. Broncos took Jerry Jeudy 15th overall in the draft. We thought they would take a wide receiver here. Wasn't guaranteed, but there were a lot of reports that they were going to take someone. I thought maybe they would take Ruggs. Of course, he wasn't available. And I would have preferred that if you owned Sutton. Like, if they'd taken Ruggs, I'd have been like, okay, not like a target hog or anything. But Jeudy could be. And so them also spending a second rounder on KJ Hamler, it's concerning. Now, I don't think Hamler is as much of a threat because he kind of like Ruggs isn't as much of a target hog. He's more of a, I guess, more of a John Ross type. But it doesn't matter. Adding these 2 new weapons is going to decrease the targets for Sutton. We know he finishes a wide receiver 19 last season despite ranking 15th in targets. So we know the targets are going to go down. He's going to need to get lucky with touchdowns to pay off his current ADP. Of course, his ADP is going to decrease, and so we just need to see where it goes down to. But then you also consider them adding Melvin Gordon, even though that's not from the draft like this video is. You know, they've got Gordon, and they've got Lindsey, and Jeudy, and Hamler, and Sutton, and it's like the Broncos offense isn't a powerhouse where all these guys are going to dominate. So Sutton takes a hit, but definitely still a guy you'll be able to draft. It just depends where is he going to go now. We don't know. Haven't had enough time to see changes in ADP. You know, the draft just happened. People aren't really doing drafts right now, so we'll know in the next few weeks. Deebo Samuel takes a big decrease. Actually, I wouldn't say big decrease. So yes, they took a first-round wide receiver in Ayuk, and he kind of shares a lot of similar skill sets to Deebo Samuel. My only thing with Samuel is we were pretty sure they were going to take someone. I was just hoping they would take someone really late so that it would be solidified. The ground game, Kittle and Deebo were like the top options, and then whoever they took late was just kind of, you know, someone to just help out a little bit. But taking Ayuk, who is going to be used on screens, is going to be used on end rounds, Well, that's like Debo's thing as well. So now Debo maybe gets less end arounds, and Debo gets a few less screens, and we already know they're using Kittle a ton, and we know they're going to run the ball a ton. It just hurts the upside of Debo a lot, to where I thought before, if you're taking him in the middle rounds, maybe he can be, a really nice wide receiver one if they use him a ton. I just think that is less likely. Can still happen. It's just less likely than it was if they hadn't spent a first-round pick on a wide receiver. Tyler Boyd sees a big decrease. The Bengals took Joe Burrow first overall, of course, which boosted his value. But then they took T. Higgins first pick in the second round, which brought it right back down and even lower, because now Higgins is, of course, more the Green replacement, not the Boyd replacement. Boyd will still be playing in the slot. But you've got A.J. Green, you've got T. Higgins, you've got John Ross on more designed plays now. But then you've got Mixon. You've just got a ton of different weapons. And while the offense will be better, I just don't see Tyler Boyd getting more than like 6 or 7 targets different weeks. And it's only like 4 or 5 receptions, and there's really no touchdown upside besides just like random weeks where he scores. So he was an okay pick before. I think he's more of just like a late round flyer, because there's just too many mouths to feed in that offense for Boyd to have like a really good season now. Next is Damian Williams, and he probably sees his value go down more than anyone, really. I mean, we said for a while that whoever the starting running back is on the Chiefs is going to be a running back one, and that is no different this season. I'll get to Clyde obviously in the winner section, but unless he goes down with an injury, Williams is only a handcuff at this point. There's no way that Mahomes is saying draft the guy, that everyone, it seems like, in the front office likes the kid. They spend a first-round pick on him, and then they're like, no, we're going to keep using Williams a lot. Like, they're going to give Clyde a bunch of work. He's so much more skilled overall than Damian Williams is. He's a great receiving back as well. Like, his upside is through the roof, and there's just really no upside with Williams, like I said, unless Clyde goes down, which means he is just a handcuff. But, and this is if they keep him too, there's even a chance that they cut him or they trade him or something like that. But assuming that they do keep him, he will be an okay handcuff if you want to take Clyde early. You're going to want to handcuff him with someone, because whoever the backup is going to have a nice role. But again, there's a chance that he's not even on the team to start the season. Kerryon Johnson definitely sees his value go down a lot as well. Lions spent an early second-round pick on DeAndre Swift. Swift was pretty much a consensus top 3, if not a consensus top 2 running back talent this season, largely because of his 3-down skill set. He can just do everything, and the Lions could realistically use him on every down if they wanted to. I don't think they want to. I think they at points want to do that, but I don't think they want to just be like, hey, Kerryon, you're just gone. Like, you're just not touching the ball at all. You're not seeing the field. I think they still do want to use Kerryon on some third downs, on maybe some 2-minute drills. But Swift is just a better running back. So this is a situation like with Damian Williams where a better running back is there now, and so Kerryon Johnson is much more of just a handcuff. So definitely tanks his value. Aaron Jones, sort of a mixed bag. So he's still going to be a really nice weapon, but they took A.J. Dillon in the second round, and then there's comments, floating around that they want to use a committee. So you're looking at that and you're like, wow, okay, so now they have like 3 solid running backs and they want to use a committee. That's not great. But then you think about it, they've also said they really want to run the ball a ton. So I guess his share could go down, but the overall volume for all running backs in that offense could go up. So I do have to drop him in the rankings just because of what I just said. Like, they just added a second-round running back. They want to use a committee. Got to drop him, especially with him being due for some touchdown regression this season. But I didn't drop him too much just because he's still the best running back in that backfield. This is still a really good offense, and he's got a good skill set for both scoring touchdowns and for having receptions out of the backfield, and he's just a good running back in general. So you can still draft him in the early rounds, just the value is a lot lower, and it's definitely riskier than it was before. Mark Ingram takes a hit. The Ravens spent a second-round pick on J.K. Dobbins. He was a lot of people's third or fourth best running back prospect this season. So you add a complete back to this offense, and we know that Mark Ingram, he's 30 now, right? And we know that running backs that hit age 30, they do not have that same burst that they once did. Do I think Ingram is just dust at this point? Absolutely not. But remember who they just added in. It's a really good running back. We know that the offense is going to regress. He's going to score fewer touchdowns on a per touch basis. And now that we expect his overall touches to also decrease, it's not good for his touchdowns. And we know how low his floor was last season when he wasn't scoring touchdowns. So you take a lot of those away. You take away a ton of the receptions. I don't see him getting very many receptions at all this season. He's going to be very volatile for fantasy. And I don't know how much his ADP is going to go down, because I do expect people to know that Dobbins is good, and I expect people to look at that and say, well, okay, we can't draft Ingram where we were before, but how much? Does it only go down a round or two, or does it go down like 3 or 4 rounds? We're just going to have to see on that one. Singletary, another similar situation where a rookie running back comes in. Not the team I wanted Zach Moss to go to. I think I'm higher on Zach Moss than a lot of people are, even looking at his athletic profile. It's not that great. I just think he's a good running back. The unfortunate part is I think Singletary is too. So now they've got multiple running backs that I really like. But that hurts for fantasy, unfortunately, because especially Zach Moss, he can play on third down. So it's not just like he's a first and second down guy and they're bringing in Singletary on third down. And he can definitely score touchdowns near the goal line. I think Zach Moss becomes the goal line back. So Singletary is going to lose some early down. He's going to lose some goal line. He's going to lose some third down. And that just really hurts. So I think both of them are viable. But it's another situation where we're going to have to see where their ADP ends up. Marlon Mack sees another decrease in his value. I really liked Mack going into the season. Was really hoping the reports did not come true, that they would not take a running back early, that they would at least hold off a little bit. But then they took Jonathan Taylor with the 9th pick in the second round, and he was most people's top running back in the draft class. Kid is a 99th percentile speed score, averaged over 2,000 rushing yards per season at Wisconsin, most comparable to Zeke on Player Profiler. I mean, this kid is exceptional. He's an exceptional running back, and if they wanted to, they could just play him 100% of the snaps and be perfectly good on offense with that. So Mack is more of a handcuff at this point and not the 4th round pick he was before, which is definitely unfortunate. Darrell, however you want to say it, he sees a hit. They took Cam Akers 52nd overall. We were hoping entering the season that Henderson would get an opportunity to be the lead back, but that's just not going to happen now. We need to see in camp how they expect this split. I don't really have a take on this one. Like, they also spent a pretty early pick on Darrell Henderson last season, so what do? Do they use Akers and Henderson as a split? Do they go more towards Akers? I'm not sure what they're going to do. So this is one where we're just going to pump the brakes a little bit. I'm not taking either of them until I have more clarity on the situation. Ronald Jones also comes out of the draft as a loser. The Bucs could have taken a better running back, could have taken a running back earlier, so it's not a worst case scenario situation for Ronald Jones. I wanted them to take Clyde, which obviously would have just been horrible for him. They ended up taking Keyshawn Vaughn in the middle of the 3rd round. Problem is, Bucs go into the draft and they're like, we want a running back who can catch passes. Then they take a running back who's pretty good at catching passes. We know how bad Jones has been in pass protection, so he's going to have some touchdowns still. He's going to maintain an early down role at times, but his reception upside is just so low. And there's also risk that Vaughn takes over a good amount of the early down work, so I just don't view Jones as anything more than a handcuff, and I think people are going to take him earlier than that, so I don't want to touch him this season. Aaron Rodgers, the final player who saw his value decrease. The Packers had 9 picks in one of the deepest wide receiver classes in recent years, and they spent none of those picks on a wide receiver, even though it's one of the positions they needed to upgrade the most. Instead, they took a backup quarterback in the 1st round, took a running back in the 2nd round when they already have Aaron Jones. So it's pretty clear they want to run the football. It's pretty clear that they're thinking about the future, but it's just just odd that they go in with Adams and Lazard and they're like, no, that's good. We don't even need to take one of the many great wide receivers. So he's a fade this season. I don't really see a reason that you would take him because name value is going to keep him where his ADP kind of was before. And I just don't see if they're going to switch to more of a run-first offense, why you would do that. Winners, though. Talked about a ton of players that saw their value go down. How about some players who saw their value go up? So we're going to start off with Dak Prescott. No quarterback had a better outcome in the draft than Dak. He was already surrounded by a bunch of playmakers, and now he adds an elite weapon in CeeDee Lamb. This offense is just going to be impossible to stop. So I think Dak needs to be ranked as a top 4 quarterback in tier 1 with Lamar, Mahomes, and Kyler. He's finished as a quarterback 6, 11, 10, and 2 in his first 4 seasons. And now he's got Zeke, Amari Cooper, Gallup, and CeeDee Lamb. I mean, that's just incredible. Dude's safe too. He's one of those players that we always say you want your quarterback to have rushing upside, averaging 4 points per game on the ground over his career. So I prefer taking quarterbacks late, but I don't think he's going to go super early. So if you want to take someone in the middle rounds and you're looking at that like Kyler Murray range, I think Dak Prescott is also a fantastic option in the middle rounds. Drew Locke also had his value go up a ton. Basically couldn't have asked for a better draft and offseason, to be honest. I mean, they bring in Melvin Gordon, who's a great pass-catching back. So now they've got 2 really good pass-catching backs. We know Noah Fant in his second season should take a nice increase. But then they add Jerry Jeudy, who a lot of people had as the number 1 wide receiver in the draft. You add KJ Hamler, a nice deep threat, and you already had Cortland Sutton. I mean, that's a fantastic supporting cast. And we saw glimpses of what he could be last season. Was he fantastic? Nope, not by any means. But we saw glimpses. We saw some plays where he was really good. We saw drives where he was really good. Even like games where he was very, very good. And he showed us that he can be a great quarterback. I don't know that you're going to need to take him. But after this draft, I wouldn't fault anyone. I wouldn't fault anyone who says, there's so many good quarterbacks. I'm going to just load up with these skill position players. And in the very last round, I'm going to take Drew Locke, who's got a ton of weapons and has a lot of upside. So I've seen some people in the comment section asking about Locke, and I kind of dismissed it a little bit just because before this draft, it was a little bit of an iffy play, didn't have enough weapons to truly be worth that late round pick. I think now, with these additions, I'm cool with it. So if you guys want to take him late, go for it. For running backs, I don't think any player had a better day than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You guys know he was my favorite running back going into the draft. So I'm a little bit biased on this take, but Andy Reid said he's a better version than Brian Westbrook. And Westbrook played under Andy Reid from 2002 to 2009. He was the featured back from 2004 through 2008. And in those seasons, he was running back 8, 12, 5, 2, and 9, averaging over 5 receptions per game. Just remember what Damian Williams did last season when he was healthy. I mean, when he had 12 touches, at least 12 touches in a game, his fantasy points were 18.5, 20.8, 15.9, 18.2, 31.4, 26.8, 19.9, and 29.3. Didn't have a single bad game when they just gave him 12 touches. And that's only 8 games. But it was more fantasy points than Melvin Gordon scored all season, and it was tied with Marlon Mack through 8 games. Just give him a 0 for the other 8 games. So we know the top running back in this backfield is going to dominate, and we can all but guarantee Clyde is going to see at worst 12 touches per game, but it's extremely likely he'll see more than that. He is the 101 in Dynasty, and he is a running back 1 in season long. Nick Chubb sees his value go up, although not like a ton. We never expected them to take a running back. They already have Chubb and Hunt. No reason to take anyone else. But they took Jedrick Wills in the first round, who a lot of people had as the top offensive tackle in the draft class. And it was a pretty good value where they took him. Their line was terrible last season, so anytime you go from an awful line and then you add in some really good some tackles, it's gonna help Chubb, who gets most of his values from running. So like it helps Chubb more than helps Hunt. Miles Sanders was definitely one of the bigger winners after the draft. The Eagles had 10 picks. That's a lot of picks. And they didn't spend any of them on a running back. Even after losing Jordan Howard, they're like, nope, we are locked and loaded with Miles Sanders. So it is just Sanders and Boston Scott in the backfield, which means we need to treat him as a legitimate running back one. He had 3 top 7 running back finishes in his final 5 games last season when they finally decided to feature him in the receiving game and on the ground. And there's no way he doesn't improve on his numbers from last season, right? Where he had over 1,300 total yards and 6 touchdowns, finishing as running back 15. He is an elite pick this season, and I'm not sure what the public's going to do, but I have a feeling they're going to undervalue him, and that's a mistake. He is a legitimate running back one. Justin Jefferson, fantastic landing spot for him. We know Diggs is gone in Minnesota, so it's basically just Thielen there. I thought Jefferson was one of the better wide receivers in this fantastic class, and he's going to have a great role in the slot in that offense. And he's going to take over basically 100% of the snaps across from Adam Thielen and command a pretty good target share from week 1. So that was like the dream spot that he could have landed at. Jalen Reagor got a fantastic landing spot. Eagles took him 21st overall. He is also probably going to start the season with as many snaps as he can handle. I have less confidence in that than in Jefferson having, basically every snap. But it shouldn't matter. They should have a lot of design plays for him. And he is a very, very, very good wide receiver, and he fills a role that they needed to be filled in that offense. So great landing spot for him. Devonta Parker. Dolphins had 11 picks in the draft, including 5 in the first 56 picks. So knowing that, you're like, oof, great wide receiver class. I mean, they could add someone really nice. They did not draft a wide receiver until round 7, the last round in the draft, even in this fantastic class for wide receivers. If that doesn't show their confidence in Devonta Parker, then I really don't know what would. Obviously, you guys know I love Preston Williams, but he's also recovering from a torn ACL, and we don't know. I mean, we've heard like nothing about that recovery. So could he start the season just a little bit slower than we'd like? Certainly. And, adding Tua at quarterback, we don't know who's going to start the season at quarterback, but you got to figure it's going to be Tua. So getting an upgrade at quarterback and just having the front office be like, listen, you're our guy. They clearly view Parker as the guy, and so we need to view him like that in fantasy. So it definitely increases my trust in him. I still have my doubts that he is the guy we saw last season. I think that he's been so inconsistent over his career that I have a little bit of trouble believing it's going to continue. But if I have trouble believing that, and I know how much faith they have in him, imagine the public. Imagine your league mates looking at him in the 4th, 5th round and being like, no, that's Devonta Parker. I can't do that. So there's going to be a lot of people like that. And so that, I think, will keep his value decent in the draft. I think it's going to keep his ADP from skyrocketing. The last player we're going to go over is one that you probably weren't expecting to hear today. That's Allen Lazard. Remember everything I talked about. The Packers had a decent amount of draft picks, and they just chose to use none of them at wide receiver. And then you hear their coach come out and be like, I love Lazard. And we already know that Rodgers loves Lazard. So if he's going to be the wide receiver 2, then he's a pretty good value at the end of drafts at this point in the season. But of course, we're going to find plenty of late round picks that we love, so maybe Lazard kind of falls off. But right now, hey, he's a wide receiver 2 that literally no one is drafting at this point in time. So that is the end of this one. I hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button? And if you're new here, how about subscribing to the channel? Thanks for watching.